Hey everyone, it's Skiesti. If you're new here and don't know who I am, I'm a top 500 Mercy streamer. Today we're looking at a 3.1k SR game. This person is currently a Diamond Mercy with a mid-master's peak. They struggle with ult usage and knowing when to aggress. They'd like to improve on their ult tracking, Valkyrie usage, aggression, and identifying when a fight is lost or not. They also have some concerns about their positioning. And with that said, let's get into it. Okay, starting off with your team composition, since you've got an Ana, it should be taking care of the tanks, and you can just focus on enabling your DPS for the most part. Your DPS choices are Soldier and Ashe. You'll be mostly playing with Ashe for damage boosted dynamite. This is a small thing, but a bad habit to have. When you're pocketing someone and moving backwards and then making short Guardian Angels forward when you could just walk forward instead, you're putting Guardian Angel on a cooldown when you don't need to. And I know GA has a short cooldown, but if this is made into a habit, you will frequently find yourself not having GA when you need it in crucial moments. When Ashe drops off the high ground, try to walk with her so that your beam connection doesn't break. When you res Ashe, she was just killed from that angle, so try to position yourself inside the building before you res, rather than on the stairs where they might still have a sightline. Try to refrain from making a lot of these short, unnecessary GAs that we talked about earlier. You can position from inside the building on the left and safely pocket Ashe from there. Leave the tank healing to Ana and help your soldier with his aggression. Instead of doing this short Guardian Angel, commit GA to behind the cars with Soldier. Although you should have GA'd earlier, when you do GA, try to do so by going behind the cars instead of in front, because it's just less dangerous that way. When you look to see if you can get the res, your soldier goes forward and beam disconnects. Once Sigma dies, this fight is most likely lost because there's only 3 of you left and it's very unlikely that you'll be able to res. Also, when someone dies, be careful about starting to GA to their body like you do here. When you're trying to look for someone to GA to reset, at least keep your damage boost on someone in range to give them and yourself ult charge. Finding value in these little moments when it might not seem like it matters really helps for being able to contribute on Mercy. When you're backing out, you could end your GA on the right side of the walkway so that there's less sightlines on you near your Ashe, and res her behind the wall so you can try to keep that space since the enemy is very far back right now. There's a chance that she dies again, but there's also potential for you two to get something done or hold that space until your team respawns. It might be worth it. Some unnecessary healing on Hog, try to keep with your DPS instead. Keep beam on Soldier throughout this fight. If he goes too far and you lose sightline on him, move up near the high ground using the building as protection to keep beam attached to Soldier. Sigma will die regardless, but once Soldier is safe, you can res Ashe and then walk left side to where your team is and try to turn the fight off of that. If you're going to commit to this fight, I'd be more proactive and Valk as soon as you hear Bob being summoned. Valking earlier will allow you to help Soldier better and be in a safer spot, but still be able to contribute due to increased beam range. In general though, this fight's a little awkward because your team gets zoned out by Bob and then by dragons later on. It doesn't look like your Ana has a sightline yet, and both tanks are critical anyway, so I'd prioritize keeping them alive rather than meleeing or pistoling the Orisa here. You should be positioned on the left side behind cover rather than sitting on cart with your team. You should probably be over on the left side with Ashe here. Since you have facing target, if you wait a little bit to GA, you should be able to avoid the burn. When you drop down because you're burned, you can bounce off the Junkertown sign instead so that you will still have a sightline on Ashe and can get to her easier. I would let Tracer just get the health kit inside the close building and assist Ashe instead because she's pretty much going there anyway. You could be standing behind the outhouse on the right side of your Ashe instead of being on the left side and getting cut off from her, because this is very awkward. I know you Valk to save yourself, but I hate all of this, everything that's happening here. It somehow ends up working out, but I'd suggest that since you were cut off from Ashe, you could have went left side underneath and then used extended beam range to assist from near the gates instead. I really don't know how this worked. If I was in your situation, this is just what I would have done. I would try to refrain from hunting like this, as it could have gone very poorly very fast if he had turned around. Stay with Ashe instead of going to the payload here. Good waiting out the burn, but I would probably stay on the right side until your Ashe pushes forward more. Watch beam disconnects and loss of line of sight like this. It's an unnecessary movement here. You can just hang out up top with Ashe without guardian angeling all over the place. Okay, I think there's two ways to potentially win this fight. The first one is if your Ana stays alive, so instead of helping Sigma, you'd heal her, and once she's good, I would go back with Ashe. Try to keep high ground positioning throughout this. The second one is if you position a bit differently to get a sightline on your tanks, and then juggle your healing better between Sigma and Hog to get your ult, and then try to rest somebody after. Still though, this fight is a little weird, and it's okay if you just take the L, save ults, and regroup. Try not to flick your beam around a lot here. You can just keep it on Ashe so that you're with her and ready. Since you're trying to keep both Ashe and Ana alive, I would position between the two of them and flick your beam from one to another and let Ana handle the tanks on payload, since she has a sightline on them. Once Ana gets too split off and you can't see both Ashe and Ana, you can fly upward to find Ashe. Watch beam disconnects like this where you're looking around for targets. You seem a little bit disoriented, so just be careful of that. You could probably stay with your Ashe on the left side anyway to clean up the fight.
Score 0-3. Switching sides. 3, 2, 1. Attackers.
This movement that you do here is actually not really safe. The enemy has a decent sightline on you from spawn, especially if you go up a little bit too high, you'll be in big trouble. Also, if you mess up and end up stuck behind the stairs, you're gonna have to go all the way around, which reduces your contribution. Holding the high ground here on Junkertown is always awkward anyway. It feels like there's not really ever a good spot, but I normally play here or here. It really depends on where your team is set up. Wait for the Genji to leave before you Guardian Angel forward. After you res Ashe, try to stay on the high ground around the corner to be able to help Ashe and your teammates on the low ground. If you're going to let the rest of your team die to regroup, you need to be decisive about it. You either try to help them back up or you die point. Right now, here, you seem a little split on the decision because you're damage boosting Soldier, but then you're healing Orisa, so you gotta decide, are you backing up? Are you dying point? What are you doing? Don't worry about healing small bits of damage that your tanks take. If your Hog can hook and pick someone off here, it would be great for your team, but he can do that without damage boost. And you're probably better off focusing your efforts on damage boosting your DPS down the main sight line anyway. Okay, you might be able to salvage this fight by Valking after Ashe dies and going to res her once Genji goes after BAP. You've got Bob and are coming up on some other ults as well, but since they're contributing Nanoblade and Cole, you could also just go next fight, but you'll most likely lose second off of it if you decide to go next fight and give this up. You could build Valk pretty fast, so if you wanted to try to turn this fight, you could. You can pocket Ashe from the high ground here safely. Can heal Bap from high ground, then swap to Ashe once he's healed. Watch allies not being in line of sight due to your positioning. Staying on the high ground makes this entire previous minute so much easier for you. It also prevents you from getting shattered, and also makes it safer to help Bap when he gets hooked and then go back to Ashe. You never seem to commit to flying to the high ground. It's okay to be there, just be aware of where the enemy is and where you can take damage from. This Valk is unnecessary. You're already up one, and your team is aggressing really well on their own, and the enemy backs up in response, so Valk doesn't really get anything done here. This is much better. This positioning is what you should have been doing earlier on. Also, Valk could have been useful here, or probably even better, for stalling when you're going to need to recontest this.
Score 3-3. Switching sides.
You've got a little bit of a Lucio moment going on here, and I'm not well equipped to handle that hero, so I'm just gonna move right along. Hate Lucio, hate him, not gonna do it. Anyway, this is where they push to, and we're just gonna move on now. Try to make sure that you don't miss damage boosting dynamite. If you can get into position a little bit earlier, then you can get your beam on your DPS instead of struggling with it like you do here. When your Bastion walks away and no longer has a sightline, you can help your Ashe keep the high ground. When you're helping Ashe, make sure that as you're walking back, you're positioning behind the boxes so you're safe while you're helping her. Leave Ryan healing to Bap, damage boost Ashe, and also would recommend that once you're behind the boxes, to look back behind you a little more often once in a while. You could definitely rest this. I know you're worried about Ana sleep, but I think you could have gotten away with it even if you just waited a few moments for Ana to back up, since she leaves pretty quickly. Try to be careful of who your beam is on. They're all grouped up, so I know it's a little tricky, but do your best. This is a nice Valk. Good playing behind roofs to avoid the soldier ult. Nicely done. Okay, this scared me because you so could have easily been hooked here. Just be careful about being behind and not in front of your team when your team is pushing. Your beam should not leave Ashe once you're with her here, since she almost dies to Doom. It's a good dodge on the hook from left, but do not Jade a Bap after he dies, because there's two tanks there and you almost got shattered. And I almost cried watching this. I'm so sorry. Although I will say that in this instance, it's best to let your team regroup for one last fight outside the gates. So Dying Point is a good call, especially since the enemy just used 3 ults for this fight, and you will have kept yours for last. Watch beam swapping, and you can play up with your Ashe to secure the top left high ground to try for a pick rather than sitting back with Soldier. It's important to know which one of your DPS has better sightlines and can be more effective. Careful about looking around for your teammates, in this case it's Ashe, and having your beam not be on anyone while you're doing so. There's no reason to swap from beaming squishies to Sigma here, especially since Doom is diving in. You should be peeling to keep your squishies alive. When you're looking at your DPS on the left, it's hard to know what's happening on the right side down main, so try to keep your perspective a bit wider or just look over there every so often. This res ends up working, and I know you feel like you have to go for it since Ryan almost has Shatter, but it's really risky since you could have easily died to the Hog. It can work out, but it's just something to keep in mind. When you're in Valk, you can take advantage of extended beams to play a bit further back. So your soldier dies for this pistol, but in this case, it's a pretty worthwhile trade so Genji doesn't get blade off, and you're decisively winning the fight anyway, so it's okay. I'll make an exception. It's okay. And that'll be it for this VOD review. I hope this was helpful, and that you're going to be able to apply it to your future games. I wish you good luck in continuing your climb and getting back up there to Masters. You can do it. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.